Hi everybody, so how are we doing today? So apparently a lot of First Nations, that is Aboriginal American women, have apparently been, a lot of them have wind up being found dead in Canada. The Northern Canadian tribes, which I don't really know a whole lot about, how they differ from the more southern American tribes. But the 1,200-page report, which resulted from an inquiry launched by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2016, blamed the violence on long-standing discrimination against Indigenous people and Canada's failure to protect them. It also made sweeping recommendations to prevent future violence against Indigenous women. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police revealed in 2014 that 1,017 Aboriginal women had been murdered between 1980 and 2012. I see. That's several decades, but still, 1,017 women in several decades. Ugh. Ugly. That is an ugly statistic. The inquiry, which was beset by delays and staff resignations, opened painful wounds as it heard testimony from 468 family members of missing or murdered women. This this discrimination and this genocide explains the high rates of violence against Indigenous women, girls, 2SLGBTQIA people. Marion Bueller, the chief commissioner of the inquiry, said at a ceremony held to present the report. Okay. I looked that up. 2SL, that's Two Soul. It's a modern terminology that references a type of native Aboriginal priest or priestess. And there's some weird sexual expression thing attached to that role. Believe me, the Vikings actually did something very similar. But actually, the Native American Indians and Vikings actually had certain ideas in common, to be honest. And Leif Erikson did have his colony in what is now Newfoundland, but anyway. Colonialism. Why does the left keep abusing this term? Colonialism refers to the attitude that someone can travel to someone else's land and lay claim to it. And the time of colonialism has come and gone. Now is the time to get over the past, live in the present, and either decide to go back to Europe, which would not be logistically possible, and they would not be able to sustain that many people, or just learn to live with each other in peace. But of course, peace is going to be hard to establish when you've literally got 100,017 Native American Indian women getting murdered. Oof. This story is very unpleasant. Another quote from Bueller: An absolute paradigm shift is required to dismantle colonialism in Canadian society, and this paradigm shift must come from all levels of government and public institutions. There's that word again, colonialism. You're using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. But the final report, called Reclaiming Power and Place, was presented during an often emotional ceremony in... I'm probably going to butcher this. It's in French. Gatineau, Quebec, near the Canadian capital, and was attended by some of the hundreds of family members of those missing or murdered, and by government officials, including Trudeau. While Aboriginal people account for only about 4% of Canada's population, they on average suffer from higher rates of crime, poverty, and addiction. Daniel Ewinen, whose sister's mysterious death remains unresolved, said Indigenous women live in fear. Says, today when I go somewhere, I'm afraid, and it's a fear that we all carry every day, and you get so used to it that it's like it's a part of you. She said in a testimony, including in the final report, I have 7 daughters and lots of granddaughters that I worry about constantly all day. I don't want them to become a statistic. Yeah, especially a part of a statistic that is ultimately so very grim. Very grim. Mind you, colonialism has nothing to do with it, because again, the definition of colonialism is the belief that you can just go to somebody's land and claim a right to it just because you happen to be establishing a colony there. Colonialism does not automatically mean genocide. In fact, you know what? Here. There, we're going to use the actual definition. The policy or practice of a wealthy or powerful nation is maintaining or extending its control over other countries, especially settling settlements or exploiting resources. Nothing to do with discrimination or genocide. Curious. A practice, idiom, or phrase peculiar to a colony. Collectively, the characteristics of colonial life. I swear, I'm going to send every leftist I know dictionaries for Christmas. That'd be a great stunt, wouldn't it? I might actually go ahead and do that. Still, that's beside the point. This is, nonetheless, a terrible, terrible thing. Trudeau made Canada's reconciliation for its colonial past a major plank of his 2015 campaign, and he has apologized for some of the country's historical wrong. Since taking office last month, he posthumously exonerated a... was that Gree or Cree? Oh, that's a C. Okay, that's Cree. Exonerated a Cree chief unjustly imprisoned for treason more than 100 years ago. I was confused by the font. It looked kind of weird. Anyway, this is a quote of Trudeau. It says, to the missing and murdered Indigenous women, eh? And girls of Canada, to their families and survivors, we have failed you, eh? We will fail you no longer. Trudeau said, promising a national action plan to address the violence going forward. To the survivors and families here today, eh? And to those watching or listening at home, I want you to know that this report is not the end, eh? He added. Perry Bellegarde, who heads the Assembly of First Nations, the umbrella group for more than 600 Aboriginal bands in Canada, urged immediate action on the back of the report. Lives are at stake. We cannot wait any longer for real action and real results to ensure the respect, safety, and security of all First Nations at risk. And these efforts must be in coordination with survivors and families. Yeah. Police action is definitely needed. At the very least, they should try and see if they can isolate the cause for all of this Indian killing insanity. Quite frankly, I think anyone who's honestly caught harming an Indian or literally anyone in such a fashion, regardless of their ethnic group, they should be seeing some serious prison time. I'm not even fucking kidding. I swear, a murder of even just one person, that should be a life sentence right there. I don't even fucking care. But, aside from the extremeness of that statement, which I admit some would probably see it that way, but, I mean, if it is literally, like, straight-up murder, we're not talking manslaughter, we're not talking a crime of passion, like, you literally deliberately went out to kill someone, that should be a life sentence. You planned it, it wasn't in the heat of the moment, it was premeditated, boom, life sentence. But, as for his little apology tour here, I don't know if he's just being very, very Canadian, or if the white guilt is strong with this one. And not to make this about white people, but really, white guilt is a form of racism. It's like, oh, your ancestors did all this horrible shit, and now we're going to hold you responsible, even though you literally weren't there and had nothing to fucking do with it. Because you're benefiting from it. Yeah, well, so are you. Unless you're one of these Indian people, unless you're one of these women, obviously. Even if you're black, you're technically benefiting from colonialism. So stop being a hypocrite and shut the hell up. Anyway, rant over. Bottom line is, I think that, honestly, there's only two reasonable options. Either go back to Europe or learn to share the land with the Indians and Aboriginal Americans, and treat them really, really good. Not like, pampered and primped and that, but just treat them better than you treat yourself. Treat them better than you treat your own neighbor, unless, your neighbor is an Indian person. Because they do legitimately suffer from some past misdeeds, which again are not your fault. But there's nothing wrong with taking pity on someone else. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, unless they really just don't want it from you. I mean, if I knew something like this was happening in Canada, wow, this is messed up, man. They should find whoever did that shit and they should hang him right in the middle of the public square, let everybody see it. Bring back public hangings for murderers. I think that'd be a great way to discourage people from committing murder. If they are allowed to see the consequence, if they're even thinking about it, it might make them reconsider. I think it'd probably work. That's how I'd do it anyway. Anyway, folks, cheers.